I didn't know what I was going to say other than I was going to thank my wife first, you know, and not forget that one.
Thank you, Jane Buffett, for putting up with me for all these years.
Jimmy Buffett spent decades turning laid-back beach rock into a full-blown lifestyle, the kind that instantly brings to mind flip-flops, frozen drinks, parrot head parties, and that irresistible Margaritaville daydream. But behind the sunshine branding and the easy chorus hooks, there's now a very unrelaxing story playing out in court. After Buffett passed away on September 1st, 2023, a legal fight broke out over the marital trust tied to his fortune, with his widow, Jane Buffett, and his longtime financial advisor, Richard Mozenter, trading accusations and filing dueling actions in Florida and California. At the heart of it all is a blunt complaint from Jane. She says she was left without clear, basic information about the trust's assets, investments, and finances. And she felt kept out of the loop on money that was supposedly set aside for her. In this video, we're digging into why Jimmy Buffett's widow says she was left in the dark about his fortune. From Margaritaville to court.
Margaritaville is by far the thing that identifies enough with, and the lifestyle and people. It's become almost generic in that sense. And yeah, I feel very lucky that happened.
I didn't want to be the front man, but a band excited me because it was adventurous. It was like getting to be a pirate. We can't do that anymore. They don't exist. But rock and roll bands were pretty close. When we had to start the band, we needed a PA system. I was responsible enough to have credit at the music store. So I became the leader of the band. Totally unwilling, but
because you had the credit.
Because I had credit at the music store and to protect my interests. From that, I had a knack for it, and I realized very early on that you had to have a sense of business to survive in entertainment.
For a lot of people, Jimmy Buffett wasn't just a singer, he was a vibe. His music basically bottled up an idea of escape, sold it back to the world, and somehow made everyone feel in on the joke. Margaritaville became more than a song title, it became a whole brand identity. Over the years, that brand spread into restaurants, resorts, clothing, housing developments, and even cruises, which meant Buffett's world wasn't just creative, it was corporate, sprawling, and built to keep earning long after the last encore. That's why the money side of Buffett's legacy was always going to be complicated. When he died, September 1st, 2023, at age 76, he left behind an estate that has been widely reported as roughly $275 million. And instead of everything moving smoothly from paperwork to payouts, the dispute that followed turned into one of those headline-grabbing estate battles that feels both shocking and, sadly, familiar. The key structure here is what's been described as marital trust, with Jane Buffett as the beneficiary and also a co-trustee. But she was not the only co-trustee. The other name at the center of the fight is Richard Mozenter, Buffett's longtime financial advisor, who is described in filings as an independent co-trustee. That detail matters because independent trustees are often meant to provide stability, oversight, and a steady hand. The problem is that only works if the relationship stays functional. Instead, this became a tug of war over control and access. And while fans might think the estate fight would mainly be about splitting money, the filings paint a more specific argument: who is actually managing the trust, who's providing information, and whether the trust is being run in good faith for the person it's supposed to support. The battle for control.
I am in the engine room of the SS Jimmy Buffett, and I have been there for a long time. So all these other little adventures are out there. Though I still love the ship and where it's going, I'd like to spend less time in the engine room. And so that's why I got into the business.
If you like your legal drama with a clear timeline, this one delivers. In late May 2025, Jane Buffett's attorneys say they gave Mozenter's legal team a copy of a petition they planned to file in Los Angeles. The message was essentially that if he didn't resign by June 2nd, she would seek to have him removed as co-trustee. Then came the legal 1-2 punch. On June 2nd, Mozenter filed in Palm Beach County, Florida, asking the court to remove Jane Buffett as co-trustee. The very next day, June 3rd, Jane filed in Los Angeles Superior Court seeking Mozenter's removal. Suddenly, this was not one case, it was a multi-state dispute with two venues and two narratives competing for the judge's attention. Jane's side has described Mozenter's Florida filing as retaliation, arguing he rushed to a different court after being confronted with the planned California action. Mozenter's side, meanwhile, argues that Jimmy Buffett appointed him as an independent trustee for a reason, claiming the singer had concerns about Jane's ability to manage and control his assets. That's a heavy allegation, and it's one that instantly changes how the public reads the dispute. Jane's lawyers pushed back by framing the dueling courts strategy as wasteful. They argued that fighting in two separate courts across the country could drain the trust itself, meaning the money Buffett intended for Jane's care could get chewed up by legal fees. This is one of those rare estate battles where the question isn't just who wins, but also how much gets burned along the way. Left in the dark. So what exactly is Jane Buffett claiming when she says she was left in the dark? In the filings summarized by major outlets, her complaint focuses on access and transparency. She alleges Mozenter repeatedly failed to provide basic information about the trust's assets and its investments. Not vague, not optional, but basic. In her view, if you're a co-trustee and the beneficiary, you should not be guessing what's in the trust or how it's being managed. She also accuses him of taking unreasonable fees and costs in relation to the services provided. That kind of language is common in fiduciary disputes, but it's still explosive when attached to a trust worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Because even small percentages become massive dollar figures when the estate is that large. And then there's the detail that made a lot of readers do a double take. Reporting on the dispute described Jane being alarmed by projections of the trust's net income, with one figure cited as under $2 million annually. For an average person, $2 million a year sounds like a dream, but for a trust reportedly worth around $275 million, that number can raise eyebrows fast, especially if the beneficiary believes the trust's earning power should be far higher. Mozenter's version of events is different. His filings describe Jane as hostile and uncooperative, and he argues she has acted only on behalf of herself as a beneficiary rather than in her role as co-trustee. He also alleges her actions have unnecessarily cost the trust money. So in simple terms, you have one side saying, I can't get information and the fees are too high, and the other side saying, you're making this impossible and it's costing the trust. Retaliation and trust money.
The store started out simply for the fact that I went to Key West and saw really tacky stuff where they misspelled my name that I wasn't getting paid for, and I was being ripped off.
One of the most pointed claims in Jane Buffett's counterclaim is the idea that Mozenter used trust funds to bankroll what her filing described as retaliatory campaign. Her attorney suggested he presumably used money from the marital trust without seeking her approval. That allegation is a big deal because it's one thing to fight about management style. It's another to argue that the trust's own money is being used as ammunition in the dispute. This is where the story shifts from personal tension to procedural questions that courts take seriously. Trustees generally have the power to pay certain expenses from a trust, including some legal costs, but that power is not unlimited. The argument often comes down to whether the spending was reasonable, authorized, and in the best interests of the beneficiary and the trust. Jane's filings, at least as reported, argue it was not. Mozenter's court filings also include requests related to attorney's fees and costs, which signals just how expensive and entrenched this fight may be. When an estate battle reaches the point where both sides are seeking removals, sanctions, and fees, it becomes less like a disagreement and more like a total breakdown of the working relationship. It also explains why Jane's side kept emphasizing that the relationship is untenable. That word shows up in these disputes when one party wants the court to accept that co-trustees can no longer effectively work together. And once a judge believes cooperation is impossible, the door opens to serious changes, like removing a trustee or appointing a neutral professional. Where the case stood.
But also, as a sailor, I have been on some rough voyages, and you just have to keep going that way. And so I just kind of, I had to take that kind of sailor mentality to steer through the bad currents that were going on. So,
but did you?
Yes.
Did you stop?
No.
That's exactly right. That's the lesson learned. Never stop.
As the summer 2025 filings made headlines, Jane Buffett asked a judge in West Palm Beach to block Mozenter's effort to remove her and instead remove him as co-trustee, arguing that the relationship had broken down and the trust needed different oversight. At the same time, she sought the same result through a separate action in Los Angeles, keeping pressure on both fronts. Public reporting around that point said Mozenter hadn't yet responded in the California case, even as the Florida case moved forward with statements and counterclaims. Another report said a hearing in the Los Angeles matter was expected in mid-August 2025, which kept the dispute on a fast track. Later coverage indicated the judge did not immediately suspend Mozenter and instead ordered mediation, a common step in high-dollar trust fights meant to prevent the trust from being eaten alive by litigation costs. If mediation fails, the court can remove one trustee, remove both, appoint a neutral trustee to run things, order detailed accountings and disclosures, and clearly define what each trustee can and can't do. Now it's time to hear from you. If you were in Jane Buffett's shoes, would you want an independent co-trustee overseeing a fortune like this? Or would you push to have one clear decision maker so you never feel left in the dark about your own financial future? Let us know in the comment section below.